Okay, so here I have a couple pieces of copper that I've made a seam for them. I'm putting a little flux on it right there. Okay, they're held in place. You gotta be able to hold things in place. So these are clamped in place so that they're not going to move when I try to heat them and solder them. Okay, and I'm just going to solder that seam together. So again, all I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up my area until the solder will melt, which will take a little longer because it's thicker copper. Not yet. There's a little bit. There's a little bit. I'll do a little hotter. And that copper will flow in. See, it flows right in the groove. Oop, there it goes. There we go. Okay. All right. And then all I got to do now is let that cool, and then I'll be able to clean it off with sandpaper. You know, I mean, it's fairly simple to do. There's not a lot to it. It's just a matter of just heating it up until when you touch the solder, it melts on its own. You know, you got to hold your pieces in place. And see, I've soldered right to that cap. The whole thing is soldered together. So I'll do one more piece with a seam here in just a minute when that cools, and we'll go from there. All right, the final piece that I got here is a seam that I had done once before and had to take back apart. There's a seam right down here. This piece is a ring that I just used a vise to hold the seam together, and then I'm just going to heat that up with a torch. Now I'm putting a lot of solder on just to give you an idea. Don't need that much, but you can see that, you know, it draws it right into the seam, and I'm not worried about the excess because I can just sand that off. You know, it's no big deal. Solder is very soft. It'll hold pretty good. I mean, you know, you can break at solder joints, but it's enough. It takes a lot of pressure, so you know. I mean, it's the best option that I know of is soldering these copper pieces. Copper is really easy to solder. Flows real well. Solder flows real well with copper. So, all right, I may try just one or two little things with a soldering gun, but like I say, I'm not the best at that. So I may give it a little try here. Okay, I cleaned up that little piece that I've soldered together. And I haven't cleaned it up perfectly, but as you can see, the solder joint is very fine. You can only see a hint of it. If I do some more sanding, you'll have to look really, really hard once this area is smoothed off completely to where the copper and the solder are even. You'll barely see a line there. Okay, and I mean, once it's polished up, you won't even notice it. Okay, I'm going to solder a couple of wires together. I'm going to pre-tin them and then solder them together. I have a soldering station. This is one that I bought on Amazon, and I'd have to go look up the model. It's a very inexpensive one. It's Chinese. It works okay. It's about a 40 watt. It's not hot enough for a lot of stuff, but it's, you know, what I got. It does have temperature control of sorts, and I got it turned up. Shows about 400 degrees, so I'm turned up about 80% speed or 80% power on it. And I've got it warmed up already. So we'll go over to the wire here and see if we can do a little soldering. Like I say, I'm just not as good with a soldering gun. Here's your soldering gun tip, and mine is not real clean. The tips should be kept really clean. I'm bad about that. I don't do a good enough job at cleaning them, but I use a little paper to clean the tip off. Okay, and polish it up a little bit. I don't usually pre-tin the gun itself, and don't mind the shakes. It's just part of getting old. I'm going to try to solder this up and do a little pre-tinning. So I'm just going to bring the tip up to the wire and see if I can't heat that wire up. Okay, there you go. Once you got contact, you can solder it right up. Okay. Once you got good contact, when your soldering gun gets dirty, you won't get good contact. See, I'm just laying it in there and it's flowing on its own. Okay, nothing really anything to it. Fairly simple after you play around with it a little bit. Then I'll try taking the two wires and putting them together and see how that works. And see if I can do it from the back side so you can see it. I may have to put some more solder on this to get them to stick. This is Teflon coated copper wire that's been got a silver coating over it. Well, that's pretty warm. That's almost too warm to the touch. Whoo, whoo, yeah. All right. Well, that's they're soldered together. I mean, this, I would put more solder on them, but they are soldered together. Okay. They're not gonna, they're not gonna come apart on you. And you don't need gobs of solder. I don't ever use gobs. I try not to because it just looks ugly. Okay. You can still see the wires themselves inside, so you just have a thin coating of solder on the wire. When I get to circuit boards, that's really my downfall. They're so tiny, and with the shakes and all, and I don't really have the proper equipment, so I have a real hard time with circuit boards. I think a lot of people do. I don't have a good solution for that. I mean, trying to solder that stuff is very, very difficult. I know from what I've read and what I've been told that you need to have a fairly hot soldering gun and a real superfine tip. Pre-tin the tip, pre-tin your wire that you're going to put on, and just basically hot enough that you can just touch it real quick and have it soldered. Any time spent on one of these little boards and you loosen all the circuits. So you just gotta, touch and get off. Other than that, I don't have a technique for it because, like I say, I just really try not to ever mess around with a circuit board. It's a little much for me, so I try to stick to my other stuff. Anyways, that's about all I know. Maybe it'll help somebody, maybe not, but that's the best I can do on how to approach soldering. So y'all take care.